Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the St. Louis Podcast. I'm your glorious host today, Eric Brown, president of iMedia and partner at Mogul Holdings, sitting next to Garrett Atkins, previous CEO of iMedia and currently CEO of Mogul Gaming, family and video game journalism and tech companies such as GBT Gaming News, VGT Gaming News, and more, with the reach of a hell of a lot of people, over 100 million people a month. Today, we have Jeremy Koerber on the podcast. Welcome. And we're going to get into the weeds with him and his business. But before we do this, the St. Louis Podcast, each and every Friday, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, we drop an episode on all major podcasting, audio, and video platforms. Let's jump into it. Jeremy, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a pleasure. We've known you for quite a while now. I think we met you back, I believe, at the movie theater, ICAC.
Absolutely. And I remember exactly what I did. I took my logo over to Garrett and I said, give me some feedback on this. And Garrett gave me some very unabashed and unashamed feedback on that particular logo.
That's what I do.
And honestly, it was one of the best moves we ever did because Vi has done a fantastic job of creating everything that we're doing right now from a Fit to Hunt platform. So it was good stuff.
Yeah.
iMedia is our marketing company, by the way.
Yep. So Jeremy Koerber, Community Program Director at Alzheimer's Association of Greater Missouri, also owner and CEO of Fit to Hunt, and of course, a personal trainer. So I thought today, to start it off, we'd get into, number one, how do you have enough time for two different organizations?
Mm-hmm.
And number two, what led you into, you said you've been in gyms for 27 years.
Right.
What led you into that? Because I follow you on social media. Your kids are, I think what is your oldest son? Is he like a junior now?
Oldest son is actually going to be a freshman in college.
Okay.
So we take him off in 2 weeks.
I was about to say, he looks like he can beat the shit out of all of us.
He is 5'5" of fury, and he'll be wrestling this fall at Avila University in Kansas City. So
Very
he's,
nice.
We've trained him well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because you forgot the two kids part. So the businesses, the other thing, and
Exactly.
then children along, right? So, oh man, where do you want to start? You want to start with bandwidth? You want to start with, you tell me.
So let's start with, we'll start with Fit to Hunt and we'll come back and we'll talk about Alzheimer's. So
Sure.
with Fit to Hunt, you've been a trainer, you've been in gyms for, you said 27 years,
Mm-hmm.
right before we got into this. What made you want to start specifically Fit to Hunt? Because really kind of what you're focusing on there is getting people to train to hunt, right? It's not just going into a gym and, being healthy. Of course, that's great, but specifically looking at those hunters. So what made you go that route?
Well, it's kind of funny too, because my first 3 clients on Monday morning was a 78-year-old grandma, a 67-year-old grandma, and a 72-year-old grandma. So our primary target market obviously is outdoorsmen, all right? Hunting, fishing, camping, adventures, things like that. But our blueprint really transcends to, it could work for a youth athlete. It can work for a 78-year-old grandma, because we're training people to be able to live their lifestyle in the way they want to do it. The hunting part of it is our niche. And honestly, what's even funnier about that is, if I can get you, let me back up. A person goes to a doctor and the doctor says, hey, you're 30 pounds overweight, your blood sugar's getting out of control, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. They may go home and they may do that, right? But most of the time they're going to fall off.
Yep.
If, like my client out in Pennsylvania right now, we started in January getting him ready for a September elk hunt. He's 30 pounds lighter than what he was right now. He messaged me the other day and said he's the lightest that he's been in probably 20 years. So the sleight of hand is, I can get you focused on a really fun goal, while at the same time over here, blood pressure's improving, blood sugar's improving, maybe less wear and tear on those joints because there's less weight. So that's what we do.
Yep.
How it got started, I've been in the industry now 27 years. So I've been a personal trainer, I've been a business owner, I've been a manager, and I also have been this outdoorsman, all right? And so I would say 2012, 2013, I was laying on the couch watching outdoor television, and I saw an ad for this company called Wilderness Athlete, which is a supplement company that was targeting their product line to outdoorsmen. And I thought to myself, that's cool. And by the way, I'm going to work with them one day. So a couple of months go by, and you start to see Under Armour and guys like Cameron Hanes come out, and so you're seeing the evolution of what people think especially here in the Midwest, a whitetail hunter, maybe
Right.
dude with a big belly riding a four-wheeler
Yep,
out. You're
exactly,
seeing
yeah.
these things change.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, there never will be a better opportunity to maybe get ahead of this. Now there's a lot of other companies that are doing the same thing, and that's fine. But that's where the birth of this came from, is looking at taking our passions from a fitness perspective, looking at what we felt was a trend that would be coming down the pipeline, and now it's more so than ever, where people are not just training for these outdoor adventures. The guy that I just trained to go to Alaska, he just turned 60. He has 2 artificial knees, and he did an 18-day hunt in Alaska. There were people that were quitting all around him.
What was he hunting?
Grizzly.
Really?
Grizzly bear, things that can kill you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. That sounds like an interesting trip.
It was a wild trip, but that is the overarching premise, is that we can train you for the hunt of a lifetime, or for those individuals, a lot of guys will stop duck hunting in their late 40s, 50s because they can't do it anymore, or bow hunting. So we train you for the hunt of a lifetime, or just to hunt for a lifetime. And we do work with Wilderness Athlete.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I'm leaving.
You write content. You've been writing content for him for a while.
Writing content, and I leave on Thursday to go to the Beast Mode Archery Challenge in Oregon, Wisconsin, to work one of their booths up there at their 3D shoot, where there's going to be 300, 400, 500 people running around. So what we've done, with the help of Vi Marketing's ability to help us become more recognized, a better brand image, is now slowly but surely working with one client at a time, one customer at a time, and then really building genuine relationships with these companies that we work with. It's important to us that if we're going to work with you, that number one, we love your product and use it, and number two, that we're not just doing a transactional, whatever that might be. I help you sell product, or I get a cutback, whatever, right?
Right.
But that there's a friendship involved in there. So that's kind of how we hang our hat.
So the people that are going elk hunting, right? They're, I'm assuming, using a bow, correct? That are going on these trips usually, because especially if you're going out there obviously there's elk trips where you can go on shoot an elk in a day because they have them in spots and you can just shoot them.
Yeah.
Versus what Joe Rogan does, which is just go out, and it may take 7 days for you to finally track one down, get in a good enough spot to shoot it with a bow. You have to get close.
Depends on the season. So early season is always going to be archery, and that's when you see a guy like Rogan, who they're going out and they're. And by the way, the success rate with a bow and arrow on an elk, I want to say it was probably less than 10% of people. Right. So it's a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of investment that you're going out just for the experience, if you will. Very few folks are coming home.
Why isn't there? I would say if you're going for a 7-day trip, say it's day 7, it's the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, at that point,
you're taking probably whatever's legal there. Right.
Let's just go ahead and have one set up in the off chance that we're not successful. Right.
But then you go into, there's a rifle season.
Yeah.
And there's a muzzle loading season. And every state has different, requirements and season lengths and things like that. But typically that early season, when people are really wanting to be out there, that's your September.
Yeah.
The elk are in a rut. They're chasing the females around. They're crazy. When you're calling them, that's what you're doing, is you're either trying to mimic another bull and get them, hey, that's my lady, come crashing in, or you're mimicking a cow call, hey, baby, I'm right here. And so it's a cat and mouse game on a mountain with basically a pointy stick. And once you get into that, it's kind of hard to get out of it. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
My dad wants to go on some sort of hunting trip like that. And I've heard people talk about mule deer being fun. What are some do you have any recommendations? Or before you give me recommendations, what are some questions you'd ask before giving recommendations?
Well, if a person say, hey, I'm going to go out west and hunt this. And by the way, when I say there's complexities to this, every state is wildly different. Some, like Missouri, if you wanted to go deer hunting during the regular season, you could go online through an app, or you can go to Walmart and you can purchase a tag. And if you've got access, you go hunt.
Mm-hmm.
In a state like Colorado or Montana, they have basically units. These are zones, right? And there's only going to be so many tags sold in this zone, so many tags for residents, so many tags for out of state or non-residents. So I think it's a bigger game. So if you wanted to go, if your dad said, "Hey, I'm actually talking with one of my relatives. He goes to Colorado every year for mule deer," and I'm like, you know what? I think I want to tag along. It might take me 1, 2, or more years of putting in for that draw to actually get drawn for it, right? You get what's called preferential points, and then when you get so many
it's like
points,
national park. It's like some of these special parks where you have to get a permit, and
it's a lottery system.
And a ton of people.
Yeah. So that would be okay. Where you want to go? Because if you're going to go hunt in New Mexico, the elevation that you might hunt an elk or a mule deer is way different. So you're talking maybe 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet, give or take. Colorado might be 12. And that's a big difference in terms of conditioning and what you're going to need.
Probably rather go to the lower elevation, you know.
It's not as cold and it's not as arduous.
Yes.
But I think those are the things that I would try to find out first. Are you currently exercising? You know, what is it that
you gotta ask my dad that.
All these things. Because, excuse me, the biggest mistake I see a lot of folks make is, you know, they wait until 6 to 8 weeks out, maybe less, to say, okay, I need to start walking.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's too late.
Yeah.
Because it's not about day one. Day one, you can gut it out. You're going to be sore, and you're going to have to acclimatize to the elevation. It's going to take a little bit of pre-work so that you don't have a miserable experience. Because for a lot of these guys, it might be the only time. It might be a one and done. It might be a bucket list type hunt.
Yep.
You want to be ready. So when someone comes and says, I want to do this, I'll ask all kinds of questions. What's your budget? Not just for a coach, but also what are you trying to accomplish here?
Yep.
Is it what you call a DIY hunt where you're just going to go out there with a map and some buddies and hope? Are you going with a guide?
Yeah.
Because guides are expensive.
Yep.
I know one client that paid $38,000.
That is
for a hunt.
That's steep.
And then chose not to take the animal because it wasn't big enough, right? So, you know, there's a whole range of complexities here that you can get into. But I think what you've got to understand in that first initial question is, what's the goal of the hunt?
Yeah.
You know, have you been working out? What are you working with a guide? Are you not working with a guide? All those things really come into play to I guess, consult with that individual.
Yeah.
As for what's best for them.
Have you had mule deer before?
I've never had mule deer before.
Apparently it's good.
It's fantastic from what I gather. So my grandfather was the one that was out there way before I even thought about doing it. And again, it really comes down to, I think, I watch a lot of Meat Eater, and I swear that Ranella is constantly like, first off, bear's the best, and then it's wild turkey, and then it's mule deer, then it's whitetail. They're all pretty darn good. Bear.
Like black, brown, doesn't matter?
I don't think you eat grizzly, but if you catch, and black bears are similar to hogs, right? So I've had wild hog that it's absolutely maybe the most delicious thing you've ever eaten, you know, down in Texas. Depends on what they're eating. Because if they're,
makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So a black bear that comes out of hibernation that's been gorging themselves, or whatever the time of year, I get those mixed up, on, say, blueberries, is going to be fantastic. If they've been a little bit lower and eaten out of the dumpster, out of a restaurant, not so good, right? So it all depends on where you're hunting these things and what you're doing.
Speaking about bears, how the hell do you prepare someone to hunt a bear?
It really depends, because there's two types. There's two types. There's the kind that will go and sit over bait. So you're in a tree stand, and then you're back, right? You're back in the woods. You may have to hike in, hike out. My client that went to Alaska, they were not sitting. They were climbing up the face of a mountain every day, glassing for however many hours. And if they would see a bear a mile away, it's you get your gear on and you go, right? So there's two different types when it comes to hunting bears. If I was going to do it, there's a lot of things that fire me up. Bear hunting is not one of them.
I was about to say, I didn't know it was is it a big thing, or is it kind of more...
People get it in their blood. So like for me, I like deer hunting.
Yeah.
I love turkey hunting, and I love waterfowl hunting. And for this reason, you're communicating with them. You're calling those ducks, you're calling those turkeys, you're trying to bend their will and go against what nature asks them to do.
Yeah.
With bear hunting, it's a lot of spot and stalk.
Mhm.
It's a lot, but it comes down to, I've got a client in Maine who it's almost like nothing exists other than black bears,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, I think, what you were raised on,
Mhm.
culture,
Mhm.
even the region that you live in. You know, there's bears that run around Missouri, but at no point have I sat there and thought to myself, boy, I really want to invest the time to go and do this.
No. Yeah.
But for my client,
Mhm.
she grew up in New England, and there were bears everywhere, and it's just part of what they do. So for
Interesting.
her,
Okay.
it's a wildly different
I thought that New
context.
York or one of those states was having issues because they stopped killing, or I guess they made it illegal to kill any black bear,
Yep.
and then they were having
Yep.
issues last year. Or
I
maybe
forget
this
which
year.
state. I want to say
think-
New Jersey was one of those states that did it.
I think
And
so, yeah, or New Hampshire, one of those guys up
you know,
there.
people get really up in arms about this stuff. And here's the deal: it's a conservation model.
Mhm.
You know, middle of the road for almost everything in life. You don't want to go and exterminate every animal that's a nuisance that's out there.
Right.
But if they go unpopulated, hey, they're not going to stop making little bears.
Mhm.
Right? They're
Correct.
going to keep doing that.
Correct.
So if there isn't a check and balance system along the way, that's when human interactions happen, because there's only so much food to go around.
Yep.
And when they realize that they can go into the trash cans and the dumpsters and whatnot, that's going to increase the likelihood of that bear human interaction. And especially, and people do make the mistake of this sometimes, they'll feed them. Same thing with a cousin used to live in Florida, and he said that a fed gator is a dead gator, because if a gator loses the fear of humans, that's when you've got problems, because you've got little kids on the bank or your dog and what. Okay, you don't feed the bear.
Yeah.
Right? And I think sometimes people don't always. They do it here in St. Louis. You're not supposed to feed the deer, and they do it. So really, at the end of the day, seeing
The
some
rule
of
of
these
thumb is
states,
just don't feed animals, right?
probably not a great idea.
That's the rule of thumb.
Probably a
Besides
good
like
rule of thumb.
fish at marinas.
Why not feed a deer?
So, like right now in the state of Missouri, there is a disease called chronic wasting disease.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and really, it's nationwide. I shouldn't just say in Missouri, but
I've heard of it.
because it's through body fluid, right? So if a deer is eating on the same pile of corn as someone that's affected over here, there's a higher probability, and it's pretty awful disease. Like they literally waste away to nothing, and they die. And so the
Can't you
state
get
of
sick-
Missouri,
you can get sick from eating it, right?
according to scientists, no. But if
Interesting. Okay.
I'll put it in terms like this. Another reason why I've never eaten mule deer, because Grandpa did bring one back one year, and I said, "Did you get it tested?" And he goes, "No." So I called out to Colorado, and I said, "Hey, I've got this mule deer, whatever it was, tenderloin or ground, I forget what it was." And I'm like, "Hey, so I don't think you tested it." I said, "What are the rules with this? What are the recommendations?" And she said, "Well, the CDC says," and she started to rattle us off. And I said, "Nah." I said, "Would you eat it?" And she goes, "Nope." And I said, "Fair enough."
There we
Right?
go.
There we go.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
all-
That's all
that's
I
the
needed to know.
only
Yeah.
answer I
That's the only.
needed is-
Would
yeah.
you eat it?
Yeah.
No. So that's one of the reasons right there.
Hey there, St. Louis podcast listeners. We've got some exciting news from our friends over at Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Lee of Farmers Insurance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for a job or to own your own business under a brand that everyone and their cousin is familiar with, Mark Lee with Farmers Insurance of St. Louis is recruiting insurance agency owners here in St. Louis for their Farmers Insurance Mentorship Program.
And as many of you are aware, Garrett and I have owned quite a few successful and award-winning businesses over the years. And in a past life, one of those was a farmer's insurance agency out of Chesterfield, Missouri.
Eric and I know firsthand how hard it is to start a business under a brand that no one has heard of and convince consumers and businesses to trust that you're an authority figure in your industry.
And as many of you know, we own an award-winning marketing firm, Vi Media, the one that Garrett was just discussing. And building that company's reputation literally took years. We're still building it to this day, and it's been 8 years in the making. However, with the Trusted Farmers Insurance Agency name on the building, we got started when we started our Farmers Insurance Agency. The trust was already built and has been for 96 years.
And if you can't do math, that means Farmers Insurance has been around since 1928. Luckily, you don't need to be a human calculator to get rich as an owner of your very own Farmers Insurance Agency.
Nope. All you have to do is reach out to the one and only Mark Lee, the leader of Farmers Insurance in the greater St. Louis metropolitan area.
That's right. So ensure he continues to sponsor our show and your favorite podcast, the St. Louis Podcast, by quitting your job today and calling Mark Lee. I wouldn't even wait for him to answer your call. Call your boss now, quit, and become your very own business owner.
Visit insurancecareerstl.com. That is insurancecareerstl.com. Should we spell it out?
Yes. It would
INSURANCE. Career, CAREER, STL.com, insurancecareerstl.com. Go there now. Back to the podcast.
And wait, insurancecareerstl.com.
Back to the podcast.
The other side of it, especially here in West County. So I was jogging last night and I look over and there's a deer in the backyard, right? There are way more deer in St. Louis County than there should be. And I mean, I do urban bow hunting. You can't kill enough deer to set it back. When you're feeding them, especially closer to homes and whatnot, and you get them traveling towards, they're going to cross roads, Garrett. They're going to do that. But depending where you're doing it and how you're doing it, you may increase the likelihood of congregating more deer in a spot, and that increases the likelihood of more motor vehicle collisions along the way. So it's not as if...
That's a good reason.
Right. Now, there's places in Missouri that you can feed. You know, you can't feed during hunting season, but it's kind of funny. You know, I put food plots out on our farms. It's not a pile of corn, but it's still food that's congregating deer. You know, cornfields congregate deer. So sometimes people look at it and they're like, does it really matter? And I don't know the answer. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. All I know is that there are some reasons, you know, that are pro feeding, and there's some reasons that are con for that.
Well, I think St. Louis County should just make it illegal.
I don't know if it is or isn't right now, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I mean, even if it was, what is a cop gonna? Well, cops give you tickets in West County for dumber shit.
Well,
For
yeah,
dumber
they have
stuff
to
than that.
witness.
Yeah.
They have to witness the crime, though.
But you know, funny story. So we
I'm gonna
work
look that up.
we work with a couple of subdivisions that want us to come in because the deer are eating everything. I mean, think about this. New development comes in, takes out 10 acres of trees. Those deer don't disappear. They don't vaporize. They're still there. And then the folks that put these houses in that have the nice hostas and flower beds and bushes are mad because the deer are eating their landscaping, for that matter.
Yeah.
So we will go in and help try to reduce some of that burden, okay? There's always folks that do not understand or don't like hunting. And so we did catch one lady last year that was trying to feed deer to get them to not come to where we think they were going to come. And we started noticing all the deer every morning were going up there. And one of our partners actually saw her throwing out loaves of bread one day. I had no idea deer loved loaves of bread, but apparently bunny bread is one of the 4 food groups for a whitetail deer. I don't know, but you know, it's here's the thing that I try to do. Even going
people
back,
like her that have no idea though that she's affecting a lot more than just, oh, there's deer in my backyard.
She likes the deer. She understands it. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing prettier than a white-tailed deer. There really isn't. It comes down to that conservation model that I told you about. And when I say this, I always feel a little Thanos-like because it's one of those, you know, why this doe and not that doe. And sometimes it's very random. That one walked closer and I was able to take it out. But the worst thing in the world is watching these deer get hit, watching fawns get hit. I hate it. Seeing them get sick because there's too many in the area. Once the acorns run out, they're going to your yards. I mean, it's not going away. So what I try to help people understand, if you don't like hunting, can I at least educate you on why it's necessary? Because here's the other thing that comes up. Some municipalities have hired sharpshooters to come in, and they come in and at a high taxpayer cost to come in and just eradicate deer herds. I think DePere did that last year.
Really?
Right. Okay. Closed the park down for a weekend and just went first blood.
DePere Park.
I believe so.
Really?
Not DePere Park. What's Sugar Creek down there by 270? And
Okay. Yeah.
So anyhow, I don't know what they did. I don't know if they donated that meat to like a homeless, you know.
Yeah.
But if you didn't know this, you can actually donate deer meat to a project called what's it called? Anyways, to the conservation department, you can donate your deer, and they will take care of it free of charge to these processing, and they will get it to families in need.
Interesting.
Okay? Feed the harvest. That's what it was. Share the harvest. Sorry. one of the most cost-effective ways, if you can find the right guys to do it, or girls, I should say, is let them hunt the deer, let them take as many out as they can, fill their freezers, fill other people's freezers. I mean, have you checked out the price of red meat in a grocery store these days?
Yeah, it's high.
Right. So
Steak keeps going up.
my entire freezer is filled with the most natural, organic red meat you could. I mean, it's full of it, and we did that by hunting in
How's
Baldwin,
cooking
Missouri.
deer steak though compared to like New York strip?
I don't know about that because
It's a little bit tougher, right?
I typically use the tenderloins and the backstraps, but I'm telling you what, I would put that up against beef any day of the week.
Right.
Yep, I would.
I've tried to cook deer a couple times, just not. I need some more practice.
We need to talk. Yeah, we need to talk on that one. But again, there's reasons for it. You're not the taxpayers are not suffering, but they're not putting the bill for these sharpshooters. People who don't have access, I'm lucky. I've got farms down south. I've got a farm up north. I've got what we call permission places to hunt. Giving people the ability to go into these HOAs that have no place to hunt and allow them to fill their freezers. And once they've filled their freezers, maybe share this with a project like Share the Harvest so that people in need. It makes so much sense. You've got to educate people on it. So if someone listens to this, when this episode drops and they're like, I can't stand hunters. I can't believe that guy you brought on does this. Were we able to educate them a little bit on the necessity? Because I could go all day long on culture, on history. You put someone in front of me, if they really want to argue about, maybe they're a vegetarian or a vegan, fine.
Yeah.
You are alive today. You are here today. Rogan said this, right? Because of hunting and fur trade. You would not be sitting here.
Yeah.
You would not be sitting here if it weren't for that.
Yep.
And yes, a lot of people have circumvented that and they go to the grocery store.
It's interesting we're not even taught about hunting.
Right.
Like we're taught
We're
about history.
We're not taught about a lot of things that would unite us on subjects that are obvious.
Yeah, we're taught about like hunters and gatherers and stuff like that, but we're never really taught about.
We're not really
hunting.
taught that much about hunters and gatherers from way back in the day.
We're talking at all.
We're talked about hunting and gathering during the time of Native Americans.
Correct.
We're actually taught about hunting and gathering at the beginning of hunting and gathering.
Sure.
Like ever at any point.
Yeah.
There's a big movement though of what we call adult onset hunters, people that have never grown up around this, because what they're finding out is this is a pretty cool way to take the butcher or the grocery store out, the middleman, and you're attracting people now who may have never been exposed to this growing up because they see it as an avenue to get connected with nature. There's no better way to get connected with nature at all than that. I mean, the work that I do on my farm that is for habitat, the few deer. Again, I had a friend say it best to me when he was trying to explain this to a non-hunter. We are working to improve habitat. Water, air, food, browse, putting in food plots, clover, you name it.
Yeah.
Every single creature up there, from your earthworms to your white-tailed deer to your avian predators, they're all going to benefit, right? So if I'm going up there to hunt a deer and there's 40 deer up there and one steps out that I harvest to put in my freezer, that deer led a life. Let's say it's a 4-year-old deer. For 4 years, all it did was eat clover, drink water, make little deer.
Yeah.
And he had one bad day. Okay? Think about that cow that was born into a pen that's never had a taste of freedom, was taken to a slaughterhouse, probably not treated the best
Their
in that
lives are
slaughterhouse.
literal hell.
It's hell, right? So when
they have feelings. Cows have emotions.
I grew up on a dairy farm. So the point I try to make is
chill, dude.
Cows are chill, though.
Cows are cool.
We if we, and I say we, the hunter does our job right, which is a clean, quick kill, they're gonna drop in their tracks, they're gonna run 20 yards and fall over. Now it doesn't always work that way. But the point I'm trying to make to anyone that would listen to this and be like, how do you do this? Well, one, if you eat meat, you're part of the equation. You're just not pulling the trigger, right? If you go down to the grocery store after and you get a steak, guess what you did? You're part of that. You just didn't get your hands dirty. And the second aspect of that is, you said it just a moment ago, it's a conservation model.
Yeah.
You can't just, I about fell over last week or the week before. I got a friend of mine that works for an organization called the I think it's the National Congress of Sportsmen, and they're an advocacy group. I want to say it was the state of Oregon. Some legislator had put a bill out there that would have banned, ready for this, hunting, fishing, and camping.
Who put that out?
What?
I have no idea, but he made a social
Where?
post. I think it was the state of Oregon. And
Oregon of all
Oregon.
places.
And I'm like, whoa. Well, regardless of like what the intent was for that, are people just supposed to live in concrete
The
forever?
actual intent for that is
Yeah.
The
to
initiative
live-
would have criminalized the injury or killing of animals, including farming,
know the-
ranching, hunting, fishing, trapping, pest control.
Pest control.
Pest control.
Right.
What?
You could have-
real.
What's the definition of a pest? Hold on.
We'll find that out. I don't know.
Well,
A destructive insect or other animal that attacks crops, food, livestock. So
that would have been deer and stuff.
that
So
is
the reason they
dumbest.
do that is that way the food companies can further monopolize food. That would be absolute monopoly.
Yep.
That's how that type of, and then it gets passed under the ideal. That's why they allow it. It gets passed under the guise of we're protecting animals type shit, when in reality it's just them killing
It's just
more
them killing
animals
more
in more
animals.
brutal ways.
Right. But again, what I try to do, what I think, if you want to get back to like what we want our company to be, it's super cliche, and I hate saying it, but it's true, is we do want it to be a community where people can look at what we're doing as somewhat as role models and educate. Social media is a necessary evil. Sometimes you got to entertain to educate. You got to get them to look at you first before, but that's what we want. And then, if we can change the face of what people think hunting or fishing is by those positive interactions, right? I think there's a lot of opinions on what outdoorsmen, who we are, how we act, and there's always bad apples, just like there's bad apples in every side of politics or everything, right? There's always going to be a group of individuals that are going to make the majority look bad, and they're the ones that get all the press.
Yep.
Right. What we're trying to do is to change that, and so hopefully people look at what we do. They like the fact that we put together professionally designed exercise programs, that we're a high touch company, that we want. It's important to me, regardless of whether you spend $1,000 or $5, that you get a fantastic experience with us, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. If nothing else,
What does $5 get me, Jeremy?
it gets you a rehab program for your shoulder. So if you have bad shoulders, you get ready to roll. It's one of our.
Garrett has bad everything.
Bad
so he
everything.
needs-
No, just 4 discs. That's all.
4 discs along the way. We hope that you like what we do enough that you'll invest with us, is what we hope, right?
Yep.
And so if nothing else, hopefully we're changing some of the opinions that folks might have who have never been exposed to anything like this. And again, I appreciate you bringing us on, because I don't know how many hunters you've brought on in the last however long you've been doing this, but it's
not many.
not many.
Hunting's evil.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm joking, everyone.
We may have had a hunter on, but not
known it.
But not known it. Correct.
Closeted hunter.
Yeah, that's right.
I know you kind of answered this before, but this will be a good clip for the talk. Kids call it the talk, right?
Clip for the
For the
talk.
gram, for the X.
Clip that, loser.
Anyways,
Jesus.
okay, you're wearing
Sorry.
a brown suit.
Sorry.
Um,
This looks
so-
hella good. This,
Yeah.
You look good today,
Shout out
by
to
the way.
Dakota Grady for
this
that.
is my new suit.
Yeah, custom
I'm
made.
breaking it in.
It is cool. I'll say that live at least. That said, for TikTok here, and I know you kind of answered it. What would you say to that growing number of people who think that hunting is bad, like just outright? Like, what's your elevator pitch to that?
Wouldn't be sitting here today. You would not be sitting here today if it weren't for hunting.
Yeah, but then they'd say, and I'll play devil's advocate.
Play it.
We don't
Well,
need to hunt anymore.
yeah, we don't have to anymore, Jeremy. Why do you do it still? Back then they
We
didn't
don't
know
have
any
to
better.
eat meat.
I had this conversation once
Mm-hmm.
with a vegan.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretend it's a vegan
Yeah. Yeah.
person saying this.
I like meat. I like to eat it.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
to go out. I like to hunt it. I like to make sure I know where it's coming from. So the day that you can convince the wolf that the elk is no longer palatable will be the day that I agree that tofu is the way to go.
Yeah. Yep.
Wolves ain't going to change, right?
Mhm.
wolf is going to continue to do that. The coyote is not going to go after the berries when it can get the rabbit. That is the way of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you choose to go that route, that's up to you. You know, if carrots and broccoli fire you up,
But why does the world need it?
why does the world need it?
Yeah, do you think the world could get away with being vegan?
Can't. I mean, you are going to have situations just like New Jersey. You're going to have situations like St. Louis County. You're going to have an overpopulation of animals. And in the end of the day, I understand the premise. They're beautiful. They're majestic. But you are not doing them a service if there is. Let me give you this. Nothing in nature receives a good death.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no old folks home. There is no bingo that happens. When an animal lives long enough, it either gets sick, it can't escape predation, and it will be consumed, most times alive, by whatever can catch it. All right? With hunting, not only does it allow us to feed our families, you know, with some of the best protein you're going to find on the planet, but it's keeping populations in manageable checks so that you don't hear that story on the news that, you know, someone had an interaction with that black bear.
Yeah.
Or, you know, growing up, I don't know what the odds of this are, but there was someone that passed away in my hometown where a deer went through the windshield of the car.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, these
It happens
things
all the time.
happen.
Yeah.
This is why you do it. Okay? And I don't know, Gary.
Living out in Wildwood, I was always avoiding deers like the plague out
you
there.
go down like Strucker Road, especially when there's no side of the road,
Just
and
interrupted the clip.
they go back and forth. I mean, it's like Frogger.
109 through there is a nightmare.
Like Frogger, man.
No,
Yeah.
WFF, both of those roads,
Right.
are just death traps for. If a deer crosses the road there, you have nowhere to swerve.
Right. So it's not as simple as just a soundbite clip. There's so many different reasons, and so I guess if I was going to be sitting there, you're doing a good job of devil's advocate, but it's not just here's your reason. You tell me this, I'm going to give you that. But I'll go back to what I said earlier. If you can convince the wolf that deer is no longer, you know, it's going to go to a pure grass diet, come talk to me, you know, and
Yeah,
then,
but you're not a
then
wolf.
we'll go.
They'd say you're not a wolf. You're a human. You don't have to do it. You know, it's evil. You know.
I do like to think of myself as an alpha.
Me too.
Yeah.
I eat meat.
Yeah.
So just to be
I
clear.
like meat. I think it's
It's wonderful.
I don't know how
You know, I'm going to go get
realistically
a
you cut
quad
out
burger
fish,
after this.
everything out of your diet. I don't know how you get some of the proper nutrients that you need for a full diet just off of vegetables and fruit.
I'm not a dietitian.
And grain, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not a dietitian, but I would
you're
wager
the
the
protein
bet.
equivalent out of a double burger, and I'm not talking McDonald's. Say you go to Helen
They'd have to have
Fitzgerald's.
protein
No,
shakes
listen
and
to this.
stuff. Like you'd have to
Listen
have,
to this real quick. Say you
you'd
get
have
a
to
double
supplement it
cheeseburger
somehow.
from Helen Fitzgerald's. The protein you would get out of that compared to the amount of protein, like the money cost of that versus the amount of money you would have to spend to get that same amount of protein out of nuts, you would be spending way more money in nuts.
Right.
Or the various other forms of
Like,
protein
yeah,
you have
the
to spend
fake
to be
burgers.
vegan. I remember when I
Those
went
apparently are
vegan. I
awful
went
for
vegan
you.
for 6 months. Once
Ugh.
I was 165 pounds when I did that. I'm like 140 something now. I have not been able to gain that weight back since. It's been like 6 years, 7 years, like dead ass. It's that hard to gain the weight back for me, and I eat like an animal, and it was way more expensive, and it tastes like shit.
Have you actually like a hamburger got beef in it,
Yeah.
right? Have you looked at the ingredients in the back of these like fake burger vegetarian
Oh, yeah, of
things?
course I have.
It's all seed oil and stuff.
Well, I mean,
Well, it depends
the
who you
amount-
buy it from, but yeah.
Yeah.
And
like-
if you want to get the really healthy stuff, as you know, got to have money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Better pony up. And you get small ass portions. You get that healthy stuff. You have enough portions for me, literally 1/3 of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus.
So that's why we all need to go kill some deer.
Yes.
Yes.
Like next
All right.
podcast is out in the woods,
Yeah.
I say.
I'd do that. So my biggest thing I've always found deer hunting boring.
Okay.
Sitting,
Oh man, so you've never killed one, I'm guessing.
I haven't. But I've only went a couple times, and like people invite me, and I'm just like, I
Right.
don't know. you sit by yourself. You can't even listen to music because you're listening for deer.
You have mad ADHD.
I do. I do. I get bored.
I hate golfing. So
that's crazy. I get bored so fast though.
Yeah.
Like if I'm fishing with my dad, because my dad loves fishing. He's fish and wildlife degree from Mizzou way back in the day.
That's cool.
Yeah, and he if I cannot go and just like sit on a shore and fish, but if I'm floating, I can fish.
Okay.
But I cannot just go and
you're moving.
Sit somewhere for like 2 hours and just try and catch a fish. I'll go crazy.
So you're asking how we would do it?
Maybe.
I got ideas.
All right.
I mean,
all right.
Take you to public ground.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we can get you to where you can spot and stalk, because my grandfather was the same way. Now it's not as successful as climbing up in a stand and being set.
Yeah.
But that's what they do out west. You
Yeah.
just got to have the ground to cover it. So I mean, you're glassing, you're spotting, and then you're going to play the wind. So you, obviously, if the wind is going to that deer, you got to get around it, right? So that you're walking into the wind. That's what I would say. Now the other aspect, if I was going to take you to our farm, just shorter hunts. So like we wouldn't go out there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We might not go out there till 4 because you know the deer are. I think the word here's a word. Check it out. Crepuscular. Crepuscular. I think is the word, which means they move at dawn and dusk.
I missed the E. I put an A instead.
So
is an animal that is active primarily during twilight period.
And that's a white-tailed deer.
Yeah.
So early mornings, evenings. So to go out there during their breeding season, you know, deer running around all day long. You'd be out there at 11 o'clock in the morning, but taking you out during what we call the magic hour. So you know, sun's going down at 5. If you're out there by 3:30 or 4 in an area of high deer traffic, last year I killed a doe over in Wildwood, and I saw probably no shortage of the 20 deer in the hour that I was there. Right. The year before that, it was just a parade, you know, deer after deer after deer. There's a lot of deer in West County, but
I walk Simpson Park down there in Valley Park because I'm pretty close to that area, so I'm always down there. And the amount of deer down there, we're talking where the soccer fields and stuff are, and the baseball fields are right there, where the archery range is.
Yep,
I have seen. I literally probably have a photo on my phone. 50 plus deer.
Yeah,
I'm like, where the hell did all these deer come from? And where the hell are they all going to go?
Right.
Like, there's so many deer.
Right.
They were everywhere.
There's a bunch.
And I've never seen it. That was like the one time.
Right.
Usually you see like 20 deer or something. But I was like, this is like a movie. I definitely have a photo. I'll have to pull it up.
I like it.
All right. We want to talk about the Alzheimer's organization here real quick.
Let's do it.
Then we got like 20 minutes left. So, all right. So the Alzheimer's organization. Let's talk. When did you originally join?
So I joined the Alzheimer's. It's association.
Sorry.
I came there. I want to say in June. When was COVID? COVID was 2020.
2019. End of 2019, I think. Right?
Yeah. March of 2020.
I started in June of 2019.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
March of 2019 is when it really took off.
Yep.
2020.
2020. Sorry. Yeah.
God, I said it 5 times.
I know.
Might be 2019 now. No, I'm pretty sure it's 2020. Anyways.
So I was there, I'd say 6, 7, 8 months prior to COVID hitting. Okay. My son asked me the other day, he's like, what do you get out of working there? And I'm like, I like building things, right? I like building business. I like building relationships. The reward I get helping families that are either trying to get diagnosed or have been diagnosed and are now, you know, trying to find resources, it's personal because we're in this 4th go around now. So my grandmother, my grandfather, my wife's grandmother, and now another close relative of hers is in this journey. So to us, it's personal. There are a lot of tie-ins from a preventative perspective to health and wellness. There's a ton of research out there that's showing your exercise, your nutrition, your cognitive exercise learning.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All those things, just like you would do maybe for reducing risk for heart disease or diabetes, also reduces risk for dementia. So for what we do, people say all the time, what do you do at the association? I say, okay, we're an advocacy and we're an education organization. So what does that mean? It means that, and we do fund, we're one of the, if not one of the largest private funder of research that's out there. So when you go to a walk-in to Alzheimer's or you donate, where does your money go? It's going to go to research. It's going to go to advocacy, and I'll tell you why that's important. And then it's going to go to programs like I work in, which is to go out in these 96 counties that we cover in the state of Missouri and Illinois and putting education in fitness centers, senior centers, hospitals, stuff like that. But I think, before we got started, we talked about what's new. Well, what's new is there's now 2.
I was going to ask you what's changed since you joined and what's going on now.
2 medications.
Okay.
2 medications that have been shown to slow the progression of Alzheimer's specific dementia. Some of the telltale markers of that are what they call this plaque that gets in the brain.
Yeah.
All right. So someone asked me the other day, they said, what does this medication do? I'm like, well, you ever have a lawnmower with a dirty carburetor and it doesn't run so well? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, you clean the carburetor out, motor runs better, you mow your grass, life is good.
Yep.
That's what this medication does.
Interesting.
Now, there's a couple of caveats to it. All right. So we got Leqembi. That was the first one. FDA approved it. Life is good. Except that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid refused to cover it. So you can get a diagnosis. We've got this drug.
Is it expensive?
$26,000 a year. So the majority of people that need it couldn't afford it. Because if it comes down to I need food and, water and electricity.
Yeah.
Right. So the advocacy work that we were able to do through working with state leaders.
To have medications that are that expensive.
Yeah. I guess that's another story for another time. But that's the stuff. When I go into communities and they're like, well, we don't have a lot of programs here. I'm like, but you wouldn't have access to these things or have them covered if it wasn't for the work that's being done. Now, the crux of this, and this is why I love these platforms where we can talk to people, is that 1 in 3 people are going to be affected by this. It may not you be personally, but it could be someone at your church or a friend group or a father or a mother or a grandparent. And so the hardest thing that we have, the biggest challenge we face is that people will talk about diabetes, they'll talk about cancer, but nobody will have a conversation about memory loss. And the trick of this new medication is that it only works in what's called a mild cognitive impairment to early stage.
Yep.
So mild cognitive impairment, you might start seeing some things that might pique your curiosity in a person, but you may write it off. They forgot this. That's where it begins. So
does it also help with dementia?
Well, so Alzheimer's and dementia are the same thing.
Are they?
They are. So think of it like this.
Okay.
It's an umbrella. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. If someone comes to you and says, "Did you hear that Joe has cancer?" Usually one of the first questions is, what kind?
What kind? Yeah.
Colon, lung.
Yeah.
Right? Dementia is an umbrella or a set of symptoms. So Alzheimer's makes up the vast majority of cases.
Okay.
But like Bruce Willis has what's called frontotemporal dementia. So it's dementia that's affected, it's different, right?
Yeah.
Similar symptoms, but it's different.
Scary, man.
It is scary.
Yeah.
There's what's called Lewy bodies dementia. I'm not smart enough to give you all the intricate breakdowns.
Sure.
Parkinson's has a dementia-like effect. And
Vitamin B12 is another.
What?
Vitamin B12 deficiency is also another type of dementia.
Right. So,
yes.
So the thing is getting people to their doctor to have legitimate conversations about it. A lot of folks don't realize that after age 65, Medicare, when you go in for your annual physical, you can ask for a cognitive screen. Very few people are doing it, and we need to champion that more and more because out of everything, whether it be genetics or family history, the biggest risk factor for developing this is age.
Yeah.
Okay. So after age 65, the risk goes up substantially. So when people start having this memory loss, all right, is it normal memory loss? Like you forget a date here and there, or do you open up your icebox to get some ice out for a glass of tea and out comes your cell phone?
Yeah.
Well, that'd be weird, right?
Yep.
Why is my cell phone in there? And those are the things, not being able to follow a recipe. I talked to a lady the other day who was asking for information, and we wrote it on a piece of paper, really large letters. She couldn't read so the processing ability. But that's critical. And it's scary because up until these 2 medications for Alzheimer's-specific dementia, the reasons to get diagnosed were to improve quality of overall care, get your finances and your lawyers and all those things in order, live life, etc., which sometimes people live with dementia. I know people that have lived 15, 20 years with it, and sometimes at a high level.
Yeah.
The way I explain it to people is none of us are getting out of this thing alive, right? So if you are experiencing, if you were experiencing some kind of weird GI thing, you'd probably go to a doctor because you might be afraid of what it could be.
Yeah.
Memory loss is where a lot of times people are putting their head in the sand and they're not having those conversations. They're ignoring them. And now it is still scary, but cancer is scary and heart disease is scary. Now that we have a viable treatment that if you start it now,
What's the treatment called?
There is one called lecanemab. Okay, so Leqembi is the brand name. Donanemab.
How do you spell that?
Oh boy, you're asking. That's a question right there. Lequimbi, I believe. Now there's time. Okay, not just a lifetime, but quality. How many more Christmases is that worth, or birthdays, or things of that nature? One of the most fascinating aspects is that they're very close. We've been hearing this for 2 years. Very close to a blood test that could diagnose it, and the importance of that is,
so it slows the progression.
Most symptoms don't start until the processes that are causing this have been going on for 10 years.
Right.
So think of it this way. You go into your doctor for your normal yearly appointment, and they're going to do a blood draw for cholesterol and blood sugar, and hey, we're going to check these biomarkers.
Yeah.
You've got a family history. If they caught it early, presumably you could start treatment earlier, which means more time.
Yeah.
Right? So the science is pretty fascinating in terms of, because when I first started there, I'm like, well, what would a test do without a treatment? Well, now that there's a treatment, the test makes all the sense in the world, because now you could catch it 10 years before a symptom would even,
So that's in the blood.
There's biomarkers in the blood. The test has to be tightened up, and what I mean by that is, if it's not darn near 100% accurate, right? So there's
that's
still
a problem.
That's a
you
problem.
Don't want to give fake,
or
false positive.
But when you think about what's coming down the pipeline, so our organization just launched their 10-year vision, and so in that, now again, we all do mission statements, we all do what we want our companies or our organizations to be, but they're not talking about like treatments or like a treatment. They're using the plural, treatments, right? And also then looking at, okay, we got this thing over here for Alzheimer's, but what about this dementia over here for Lewy bodies and whatnot? So there is a ton of research that's being done, even right here in St. Louis at Wash U, on these things. So
why do I feel like dementia and Alzheimer's wasn't as big of a thing when I was like growing up in, say, the 90s? Or is that just me?
I'll tell you why. So my grandfather, great-grandfather, was diagnosed at I think like late 60s, early 70s with what they called hardening of the arteries.
Got it.
Okay. Have you ever heard the word senility?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Grandma's just getting old. This stuff's been around.
Okay.
It hasn't really, but even culturally, there's certain cultures that just assume that our older folks are going to have this.
Right.
Not necessarily so. So I think that it's been around. I think that now that medicine has maybe given it a little more attention, research has given it more attention, now there's more names to it. But even like what you said a moment ago, and it's a common, and I don't jump right out to correct people when they say, well, what's the difference between this and that? But it's an opportunity, right? Because I've heard this said before, Grandma didn't have Alzheimer's, she just had a little dementia. Well, it's not my job to correct you in that moment of time, because it doesn't matter.
Well,
but
you also wouldn't know.
Right.
I wouldn't know, because my grandma had dementia.
Right.
But now I'm curious. I have no idea if it was Alzheimer's or whatever, or if she was even diagnosed, or if it was just dementia.
And at the end of the day, for a lot of people, do you need that name? Right?
What does it do now?
Before
she's passed away, like what? It doesn't really change anything.
Right. I think for the matter, so like the relative right now that is fairly close to my wife that has this is not eligible for the new treatment, because there are some side effects that come with it, and with his other health issues, he's not a candidate, right? So it's not a guaranteed, But, if it doesn't make sense to go back and correct folks along the way, but we do try to educate them when they have that, well, tell me the difference. Okay, well, and again, I'll go back to the cancer example. It's an umbrella, and there's different types that fall under
we had American
that
Cancer
umbrella.
Society on last week.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a question, and I won't ask it specifically about the Alzheimer's Association. I didn't ask people last week because they have not worked there long enough for me to feel like bullying them like this if they would have taken it this way. But one thing that is quite well known, I'm sure you're aware of it from working at the Alzheimer's Association for so long, not because of them perhaps, but because this is widespread across many of the world's largest nonprofit organizations that study health, is that many of the top donors are also the top causes for the diseases that they're donating to.
Oh, yeah.
That being said, what do you make of that?
Well, I don't have all the inner workings, Garrett, of the legalities when it comes to what research is funded, how, and where. But I can tell you with great certainty that, like, when I go out into the community to do education with a group, okay? So if I were going to come to your offices and educate your team on what it is, what it isn't, et cetera, if, for example, we had a company that funded a drug, right? We're first off, we'll disclose everything, okay? And we talk about, it may not be a fit. We may have to politely decline those things because, there's bad things that happen, I think, in every industry and every research aspect to it. So what I know, and I can't speak to this to a high level because that's not necessarily what I do.
don't ask you to speak on it on your organization at all, but just
what
in
I
general.
know in general is that when you're looking at an organization, I'll rephrase it like this. Let's just take what I do out of the equation. If you're looking for an organization to support, I think those are very viable questions to ask in terms of where do the donations go?
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you, not necessarily to the dollar, but I can tell you with great certainty where the money that's raised through a walked-in Alzheimer's or a general donation or a longest day is going to go, okay? And then I also know, just from working with them programmatically, even from a marketing perspective, and I heard this yesterday, that, cause-related marketing is a big deal, right? But we have to be careful in terms of, how that, there's rules, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So organizations that abide to those rules and a high code of ethics, I think, are great organizations to look for. And I don't even, as you said here today, I couldn't give you a list of 10. That's where I think, if you're looking to support or work with or champion even, I think that's something that you would want to do your due diligence before hopping in there. So it's a hard question to answer, and I feel like I am a politician right now. I feel like I'm answering on both sides of my mouth, but that's what I know with the experience that I have, and then what I would suggest to anybody that is looking at being a donor or a volunteer, right?
Yeah.
We have 40 staff members for 96 counties. We would not be able to do what we do without the help of volunteer partners throughout the state. They're our lifeline. Right? Yeah, they truly are.
And another question, I don't know if you were aware of this. How long have you been with the Alzheimer's Association?
About 5.5 years.
5.5 years. So a few years back, and I don't believe these people, I did not double check, but I do not think they were. But there was two people, scientists, in fact, that basically were found to have basically 2 decades of research were founded to have been fraudulent over and they were like leading scientists on Alzheimer's research.
Is that the drug they made like 5 or 10 years ago that didn't end up doing anything?
It was actually worse than that. It was basically their research on the fundamentals of how Alzheimer's works, from my understanding.
I remember watching.
And it ended up being fraudulent and most likely well, yes, it was purposeful. Henceforth fraudulent.
Right.
Yeah.
What has changed since then, if anything, in the industry?
It's a great question. So while we support the research, I'm not hand in hand working with researchers. I remember that news break, however you wanted to call it. And actually, I had someone that
this happened in
texted me,
2022.
right?
Yeah.
But someone texted me probably 6 to 8 weeks ago. I guess they were thumbing through an old database and they found that report. And so, what I know about that is that sometimes people do unethical things, especially when grant dollars are involved.
Yep.
I don't know all the ins and the outs of why they chose to go that route. It probably revolved around money in some capacity. But
as it usually does.
Right. But, I was actually talking to some researchers, not that long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And when they're doing it the right way, there is a series of checks and balances that should be following through that. If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong on this particular case, I think they were doctoring like MRI images, showing this versus that.
Yep.
Basically creating a story or a narrative, if you will. So that would probably be a better question for someone like, say, that does research at WashU.
No, I just didn't know if it.
Yeah.
I wasn't asking in regards to the researchers. I don't know what capacity you are, because like the people last year, they were young at their organization, rather green in the gills, and they, for instance, they went around and even offered us a tour of one of the research facilities they cooperate with here at one of the universities, and so they operated in obviously a different capacity than you, but also did not know as much about their organization as you do about yours. I didn't know if that type of news, since it occurred in 2022 and you've been there for 5.5 years, they like rolled out changes to how things worked, because that was obvious. Well, from the outside looking in, looks like a big deal that would affect things outside of the research labs as well.
Well, I'll tell you what it did do is that we had to be, and again, I think this is important no matter if there's a bad story in the news or not. You need to be transparent and you need to be very forthcoming with the people that are supporting you in this. So was there, I don't remember exactly what position stands or press releases went out along that time. But again, much like anything in life, when a bad story comes out, there's always going to be a group of people that lump everybody into that. So if there was anything that we had to do, it was kind of similar when I talk about people that poach deer.
And real quick, just to interrupt, this was not people at the Alzheimer's Association.
Right. But people that poach deer or break game laws, they reflect me.
Yep.
When you say game laws, you're talking gain of function or
game
laws.
Food.
Like, they're breaking,
hunting,
right?
Gotcha.
Right. Same thing over here. When people do things that are unethical, and we get lumped into that because we either help fund research or we're talking about research, now we have to spend extra time going back and, in some cases, even though it wasn't our fault, rebuild that trust or that image along the way. So it's always going to be that, though.
Yeah,
it is.
It's always going to be there.
Before we get out of here, where can people find you? Where should people go if they want to help with the Alzheimer's Association Fit to Hunt? Tell the good people where to find you.
And do you have any events going on? What's the number one thing that you? Well, two things, of course. Plug your socials, all that jazz.
StayFit2Hunt.com.
Yep.
StayFit2Hunt.com.
But do you have any big events, programs you launch, anything like that you want to put an extra focus on?
Yeah, with Fit to Hunt, we have just put out 3 new DIY programs, and what I love about that is these are professionally designed programs, because a lot of folks may not have the disposable income to hire a coach. Well, here is our expertise as we would put together a program for a client in real life that you can purchase for, a very, very affordable price. Not to mention, all of those programs are linked back to our YouTube page, which I believe at this point we have something like 468 different videos on there. So if you're like, I need an exercise, there you go, right? So we really want people to visit those, subscribe, follow us on social, you know, Fit to Hunt Official. I mean, that's the kind of stuff where you're going to be able to figure out real quickly if we're the vibe that you're looking for. And at the end of the day, you could follow us for a long time and pull out a lot of cool tricks and never spend a penny. And that's the best part about that.
That's true.
model.
I follow the
Yep.
channel myself, and I don't follow many of
you can
my
tell.
clients.
Look at 'em.
Yeah, you can tell by how big I'm getting. I'm
Yeah,
really fucking
huge.
fit to hunt.
Well,
I'm
hey,
fit to
we
walk.
tell people all the time, it's not about how good you look in your camo, right? If you wanna look good, that's great. But I want
Okay,
you
well,
to
I look good. Okay,
you to
that's
perform,
not the
right?
problem.
You look good. Yeah,
Whoa,
yeah.
I look good.
Yeah.
All right.
For the association, we are walking into literally, pun intended, walk season, right? So I think
Okay.
there's something like 27 walks throughout the state of Missouri, really nationwide. So St. Louis's walk will be in Chesterfield on October 26th.
Okay.
And honestly, it's our largest revenue generator, right? Typically
What
what
is-
it is, the walk to end Alzheimer's.
When does that take place?
October 26th in Chesterfield Amphitheater. But there's going to be walks in Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff, Belleville, Illinois, Hannibal, Missouri. What these are basically people that have been connected to this disease in some capacity that are going out and helping to raise money. You can do it through Facebook fundraisers. You can do it through bake sales. You can do it by asking general donations. But that's where the people, and I told this in a team meeting yesterday, I said, invariably, if you do a good job for people, they're going to come back to you. And they're going to come back in one or two ways. They're either going to come back to volunteer or they're going to donate. And sometimes it's both. So, a lot of times they get a little, my team gets a little jumpy when I call it a pipeline, but it truly is. You're going to enter here. We're going to help you. You're going to gain value from that. And then after time, you're going to come back. And maybe that comeback is a donation. Maybe it's a comeback of helping that person get connected to us. But if you do good things for good people, most of the time, it's going to come back again and again and again because this disease isn't going anywhere. And so we're fighting it. And we're fighting it grassroots, one conversation at a time, $1 at a time, one education event at a time. If people really want to figure out where we are, go to communityresourcefinder.org.
Okay.
communityresourcefinder.org. We
Spell
said
it out
that.
for 'em.
Yeah, no.
I'm just kidding.
We all said that at once.
Click
though.
the Alzheimer's tab, and you can literally plug in your zip code.
If you can remember.
If you can remember it. And
that was a joke.
That was a
You
joke,
kidding?
right? I thought you were talking about
Yeah,
the
that's
URL.
why I
I was
laughed.
making an Alzheimer's joke. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's why I laughed. Yeah.
Plug in your zip code, and you could say, hey, what's around me? 25 miles, 50 miles, 75 miles. Support groups, education, early stage social engagement events. And that's huge because when you're a caregiver or someone that's been faced with this diagnosis, it's like someone has blasted you with a fire hose in the face. And so sometimes, the repetition of understanding we have this 24/7 helpline that you can call, understanding that we have these web resources that are there, and then starting to get people connected to these local, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk about
absolute-
that stuff because it's huge, man.
Absolute pleasure,
Yeah.
Jeremy, having you on. Thank you for joining us. That is all the time we have for today. However, we will be back next week.
Yep.
Please like, review, subscribe, share with a friend.
Real quick.
If you didn't like something, please tell us as well, or you can directly message Garrett.
Yeah, and to tell us, go on stlouispodcast.com. Once again, that is stlouispodcast.com. And please, when he says like, review, subscribe, he really means go on Spotify and Apple. Click on the podcast, not just episode, the actual podcast, the
Correct.
St. Louis podcast, and scroll down till you see the stars and press review. That helps us tremendously. Thank you very much, City of St. Louis.
And all right. As always, shout out to Half Coast Studios, halfcoaststudios.com here in St. Louis if you're looking to record a podcast.
That's where we're at right now.
Or just have them edit it and distribute it for you. You can do that as well. Insurance agent, if you're looking to become an insurance agent, Mark Lee, Farmers Insurance. I'm sure you've already seen the ad roll for that. And finally, if you're looking for the best damn marketing company in St. Louis, go to vi.media. There's
No dot
.com.
Not at all.
Vi.media, or just hit me up. That's it.
That's it. Thank you very much,
See
Eric and
everyone next
Jeremy.
week.
Bye. Hey there, St. Louis podcast listeners. We've got some exciting news from our friends over at Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Lee of Farmers Insurance. If you're looking for a job or to own your own business under a brand that everyone and their cousin is familiar with, Mark Lee with Farmers Insurance of St. Louis is recruiting insurance agency owners here in St. Louis for their Farmers Insurance Mentorship Program.
And as many of you are aware, Garrett and I have owned quite a few successful and award-winning businesses over the years. And in a past life, one of those was a farmers insurance agency out of Chesterfield, Missouri.
Eric and I know firsthand how hard it is to start a business under a brand that no one has heard of and convince consumers and businesses to trust that you're an authority figure in your industry.
And as many of you know, we own an award-winning marketing firm, Vi Media, the one that Garrett was just discussing. And building that company's reputation literally took years. We're still building it to this day, and it's been 8 years in the making. However, with the Trusted Farmers Insurance Agency name on the building, we got started when we started our Farmers Insurance Agency. The trust was already built and has been for 96 years.
And if you can't do math, that means Farmers Insurance has been around since 1928. Luckily, you don't need to be a human calculator to get rich as an owner of your very own Farmers Insurance Agency.
Nope. All you have to do is reach out to the one and only Mark Lee, the leader of Farmers Insurance in the greater St. Louis metropolitan area.
That's right. So ensure he continues to sponsor our show and your favorite podcast, the St. Louis Podcast, by quitting your job today and calling Mark Lee. I wouldn't even wait for him to answer your call. Call your boss now, quit, and become your very own business owner.
Visit insurancecareerstl.com. That is insurancecareerstl.com. Should we spell it out?
Yes. It would
INSURANCE. Career, CAREER, STL.com, insurancecareerstl.com. Go there now. Back to the podcast.
And wait, insurancecareerstl.com.
Back to the podcast.